Thursday, the 13th of October, and this is the Immerse.land Roundtable Discussions. I'm Marcy Turman, one of the founders of Immerse.land, the immersive trading cryptocurrency game. And tonight we have with us again Tabalo Tres-Valderas. Hello, Tabalo.
Hi, everybody.
We have a friend, Immerse Game, Klaas Homan, who is an NFT owner.
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
And we have Gavin Smith from the Panzora Hedge Fund.
Yeah.
So tonight's subject is what's the 411 on NFTs or non-fungible tokens? So what NFTs are is a unique receipt of ownership of an asset that is recorded on a blockchain. NFTs typically contain references to digital files such as photos, videos, or audio, and are not the asset itself. Now, some would argue that the concept of NFTs is of limited value since the ownership of NFTs does not necessarily carry other rights. But there's still a great deal of interest in NFTs, not least of which because they sometimes are traded for substantial money. So, would each of you give your opinion where you stand on NFTs and whether you own any and whether you think where you think they are in their development and their value?
Okay, I'll kick off because I'm probably the one of the group who knows least about the NFT market. So I'm gonna give the layman's view of NFTs. I think they have it's an interesting concept, especially when it comes to electronic art. I guess where I draw the line in the spectrum, I like the idea of a platform that allows artists to express themselves, to monetize that, to people to own those the digital rights to those assets. I guess, and I'm talking about art in particular. I know there's a much broader use case for NFTs, which we'll come on to. But I guess something that's quite dear to my heart in the news recently, where I draw the line is where you get NFT artists making copies of real artists' work, selling them and destroying the art. I think what they've basically done, in to a layman's term, is produce a print of a picture and then burnt the picture. You haven't moved the art into the digital space. You've moved a print of the art into the digital space, and you've destroyed the original, which I think is unnecessary and really goes against the idea of art and how it can be incorporated on the blockchain. There's a non NFT owner's view of the world. Over to you guys.
Should I give my little opinion on the NFT market and then where we stand, where I
Please.
think it's going? So I'm funny enough a little bit of I'd say turning the things on its head. So where the craze is at the moment with NFT and as you say NFT digital art, especially for the metaverse, I think that is not very sustainable for me in the long run. I think it's a bit of a craze at the moment. There is collector's value, but a very small number of collectors really engaged in all of this. Where I think NFTs are having a big future is much more in a, how do you say, in a real life application. I give you an example. So rather than some digital art that you bring in the metaverse or land that you buy in the metaverse and then resell, for me, let's go back to what is the original meaning of an NFT, and that's the proof of ownership. So you can compare it to, say, you buy a Rolex, you get a receipt, and that receipt proves you're the owner of this Rolex. Now, with an NFT, which is not the product itself, but a representation of the ownership of the product, in a digital format, means that you can hold it in your pocket. It proves ownership. You can collateralize it if you wanted to. You can have a liquid market. You can prove your ownership. So if you lose or someone steals your Rolex, without the NFT proving this is yours, you have no chance of reselling it or whatsoever. And that applies to anything in the real world, especially things of value. So you can tokenize them through an NFT and have prove your ownership. When it comes to art, I think, but that goes more into digital art. The interesting part here is that you used to buy a painting. The painting has one original copy, you put it on your wall, and that's it. With NFT as art, as proof of ownership of the art, very often the piece of art is not the piece of paper and the drawing, but it's an electronic file. So if you have ownership of this NFT, it basically means you can use this piece of art in original quality and through tokenization commercialize it or do with it whatever you want. I give you an example. I bought a painting, it's a real life painting as an NFT, so I can now print it out. I could also mint tokens to give the permission to someone to use this piece of art, say only in the US or only in Europe or at a limited time period, etc. So all of that becomes very clear because through tokenization and NFT, you have much clearer access and ownership management of it. And that's where I think NFT will anything that we're talking to. But there are some limitations at the moment in terms of technologically, legally, etc. That's why there's no mainstream adoption at the moment. But I think it will become a very normal thing. When you buy something, you will get an NFT representation of it for your wallet. That's it.
But your I have a question about something that you said.
Why don't you let Tabalo give his overview, and then we can go into more depth. That probably makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm going to go kind of more, I'm going to start a bit macro and then kind of dig into the art market. So if you guys are in the chat that's associated with this voice channel, I sent a meme, and I sent this meme because it sets the baseline that I deal with when I talk to family offices that are oil-dominated families, or whether it's just older investors that don't understand the technical difference of like paper or digital, and then these kind of fundamental aspects. So first of all, are you guys able to see the meme? It talks about it talks about when land ownership on paper was first invented, and then basically how NFT technology is essentially the same thing, except just less legal bureaucratic paperwork involved. So with that said, you think of it like a mortgage. Say you have a mortgage that's a non-fungible token, and it's just through a trusted, system of mortgage issuance. Why would you need to pay all these absorbent amount of closing costs and legal fees when really you just need to, cryptographically sign some mutually agreed update through multiple parties, and then boom, you don't need to pay thousands of dollars to do, which is just another big systemic inefficiency issue. And then kind of digging into it, so ERC, this is specifically the 721 protocol, and this the main competitor that's trying to take this business or this market that's primarily heavily on Ethereum, layer 1 and layer 2 is Solana. Solana has a lot of centralized faults, even worse so than Ethereum. So just kind of adding that context. And then more specifically into the art market. So the biggest market in NFT art is the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is ran by Yuga Labs. They run that Bored Ape Yacht Club, and they also run the CryptoPunks, which are the two largest liquid markets in NFTs. And right now they're getting an SEC probe into them because, as you can imagine, these NFTs are ripe, and this art market is ripe for fraud, financial engineering, all these things that already happen in the art. So personally, I don't see it as an art tool because I think it's just how you encode specific properties and data onto a non-censorable chain. Because in the art market, it's like, I kind of see it as just like 70% is fraud. It's a financial engineering tool for the ultra wealthy to buy art, reassess the value, donate it, and then get a huge tax write-off about it. And then for the most part, that's kind of how I bubble it up. And then on the technical side is just what I care about is the fact that all these art that is exchanged, especially on Ethereum, the primary marketplace is OpenSea. So OpenSea is the primary marketplace, and there's a few others. But what people don't understand is that the art you buy on OpenSea, that art itself, the data of the art itself, is not what the NFT you own is on your wallet address. Your wallet address says you own this URL to a central managed web server that's not yours. So infrastructure and data that's not yours, and it's just pointing you to that is just traditional. So with that said, that web server can be taken down, the censorship is still there, and the fundamental value is not encoded on the chain that can't be manipulated by centralized authorities. It's just kind of a hack to say, hey, I own this art, and it's just no different than saying, setting up a website, kind of a server. So
you were going to.
Well, my question to Klaus about the statement that you made concerning the apportioning of ownership. So one of the things I believe you mentioned was that you could provide people with rights within a certain jurisdiction to use the piece of art that you owned. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
Absolutely. I mean, take a piece of music. Okay, so at the moment, if you have a piece of music, you have to go through different publishers. You have to deal with different agencies. You can give your rights to, let's say, one of those companies, one of those brands, and say, please use my music in your advertising, etc. And through NFTs, you could control that much easier in terms of what's being played, where is it being played, who has the rights to play it, etc.
But does the
It's nothing different than in the real world. It's just much easier to organize.
That's a big point. I actually have information on that in the European market. So I have some friends from Finland, and they run this decentralized blockchain music company, and the intent is to encode the creator's rights into an NFT versus selling the rights to these huge, Blackstone subsidiaries that just own your creative rights forever and gain all the revenue for it into end of time. So it's kind of this like empowerment to the music creator in how they commercialize or monetize their art and music. That's pretty profound, and especially when you kind of understand the legal intricacies here, or the fact they become immutable by the technology.
So is the NFT itself the encoding of the contractual information? It is not simply the right of ownership, a receipt of ownership. Does the contract, the actual details of the contract, is that part of the non-fungible token?
In my eyes, yes. I mean, I guess it depends a little bit how things are encoded, and I'm not a techie, but normally you would have in the smart contract, which is encapsulated in the NFT, you would have a mention of the rights and ownership.
Doesn't that tie into what Tabalo was saying, though, that you can have all of the NFT encoding you like, but ultimately, still, maybe this will change, but still, you're relying on a centralized authority, a centralized DRM, for instance, to read that contract and say, okay, well, you're geolocated in Europe, you don't have the right to listen to this, so I'm not going to allow you, I'm not going to stream that music to you from a centralized server. So although the ownership token is decentralized, the provision of the music is still very much centralized, and the rights management very much centralized.
And I think music is a complicated example because there are so many players apart from the owner of that piece of music, because you have the distributor, you have the agent, you have the radio stations, you have, what is it called, AGM, I think. That's the agency who sees which music is played where, etc. So that's much more complicated. If you take the example of an image, it's much easier because it could be a private person owning that image, and then you can say, okay, I um, I grant someone the rights to use that image somewhere as a logo or as whatever, and encode it through a smart contract. And whoever owns this token really has the rights to commercially or privately use that image.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I think where that's really a simpler model that I think has started to show real value for NFTs in the commercial aspect is in twinning, pairing twinning, where a brand will sell you an NFT, and that NFT allows you to claim your real world item, whether it's a Rolex watch, as you said, Tabala, or whether it's a pair of sneakers. So they actually provide you something which you can use in the metaverse, perhaps, but also gives you the right to get a real world value. And it's actually it's the first real commercial implementation, I guess, of NFTs that I've seen start to get rolled out.
Let me be slightly cheeky and play it back to you. So in the context of immersed land, and say I want to rent or buy a piece of land through an NFT, or do I rent the NFT? Do I buy the NFT? Do I own it afterwards? How would you see that in this context?
So in that context, we see them as it's a way of the asset being used on in a Web3 environment. That's why we're tokenizing. We see it as just a way of the old term before NFTs were a thing was tokenized assets, and that's what these are. They're tokenized virtual assets. It's a way for you to hold that asset in your wallet, trade, perhaps pass it on to somebody else. So a guild hall could be passed on to another person, maybe as a financial transaction, maybe because you like them. So you just give them a guild hall so they can play in the game. So that's why we've chosen to go down the NFT Web3 route, because it gives people a real feeling of partition and ownership. You can also, and this comes again, it comes back to Tabalo's point. We encode in the contract the guild rules, so how the guild distributes its prize winnings, but that's still done centrally. So it still has to be centralized to a degree because the prize comes from the ecosystem, from the game. The game distributes that prize, and then the contract says, okay, I've got this much prize money. I'll now decide how I allocate that out based on the rule within the guild's contract, which everyone can see. So it's a way of enforcing transparency. That's
So
Sorry,
I
let
have an.
me.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, one thing, Tovalo. One second. One thing I want to also on very briefly. NFT does not mean decentralized necessarily, in my mind. An NFT can be centralized. That's just a proof of ownership, which is decentralized or not decentralized. So, does one person or institution agree this is yours, or do various people agree this is yours? But the NFT itself just means it's about a single token that's decentrally acknowledged as your property or centrally. So with all those terminology, it's easy to confuse it or to mingle it up, and then it becomes very different. Sorry,
no,
Tabalo, all yours.
So I
yeah.
want
So
to I want to add additional precision to what you're saying, Klaus. For non-fungible tokens that are using Ethereum's protocols, what matters is the validation by Ethereum's blockchain. It doesn't matter the validation of the SEC, for example. And then I have another cheekier question, and it's are Chinese citizens allowed to own land in the metaverse?
uh, I'm not even going to try, and I'm not even a lawyer, let alone a Chinese lawyer. so, so yeah, I can't comment on that. But
But Klaus, I fully agree. It's I do think though, like if we just add the recent terminology and how it's devised, it does relate to the specific ERC 721 protocol. Now, if NFTs as a concept evolves and somehow manifests in the market and markets are made beyond Ethereum, then I think we can adopt maybe a more generic terminology. But as far as I see it, it's basically just it's Ethereum validating ownership versus um, anybody else.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, and that's a little bit leaving the topic, but if you think it through, there are all sorts of complications coming to us. And I give you an example at the moment, or from now on, if you have a legal dispute, you go to a lawyer, but the lawyer all of a sudden needs to be able to read smart contracts, and so does the judge. You know, it's like bringing your car to the mechanic. All of a sudden, you go to an IT guy before you do anything. And then the same will happen here, I think.
It's like taking your W to a Toyota mechanic.
Yeah, and then they first of all need to plug it to a computer and it will tell it what's wrong and what's right with it. And I know of people who are writing smart contract language for non-technical people, so to speak, and you know all of that will come. But
Isn't
it will be fun.
won't the view they take very much be the SEC line that we don't really care what the smart contract says if to us it looks like a security and it behaves like a security, then it's a security, regardless of what you say it is. And that's, I think, one thing they're looking at with the way, if you look at some of the ways NFT assets are being used, where they're, and you touched on it, Klaus, where they're broken up and securitized. You actually use the word securitized and then parceled out to individuals. Doing that, doesn't that immediately move NFTs and some tokenized assets under the purview of the SEC? Because it's no different to doing that. Let's take it away from it being a bit of electric art and say that that NFT actually represents a property. But what you're doing is you're breaking that property down into 100 securities that you're selling off to individual investors.
You know, Gavin, you made me have a thought because they can make all these policies and laws, but if they're unenforceable, then everyone's wasted their time. And it made me think, you know, like this specific protocol is the SEC saying this entire protocol is a securities protocol? And if it's a securities protocol, are they going to apply this protocol to all of the legacy financial securities? And, you know,
Yeah,
it's like, it's a very hairy subject. And then,
I think to be fair to the SEC, which I'm normally not, but they immediately came out with a statement that said we don't comment on ongoing investigations. This was a flag that was raised by somebody, presumably somebody that's been asked by questions. The SEC haven't formally announced the scale of what they're looking at, whether they're looking at NFTs for property, whether they're looking at art, whether it is, as the article suggested, the ape groups that are under their scrutiny. I think they're at the similar stage they were with DeFi protocols 2 years ago, and even with DeFi protocols come out and put a policy in place yet. So I think we're probably at very early days in terms of SEC and NFTs.
I think it touches on two things. One is the taxman, of course, and the other one is the SEC. But
Yeah.
by definition, NFTs should be unique and not sold in bulk. So I think the whole implementation of Bored Apes, etc., is a very smart way, as you said, Tobalo, a very smart way for a couple of smart business people to bulk produce products and then make some money. But the SEC should normally not even look at it because if it's individual items sold in private, then the SEC has nothing to do with it.
I fully agree. I think really the SEC, their job in the market is just to message confidence and control in the institution. But my pragmatic point of view is they don't know what they're doing, and I say that because there's a fundamental first principle about mental models we use to assess and analyze and process these, whether it's like an investment process of due diligence or whether it's just a purely strategic strategy session about how you kind of wrap your mind around it. And the fault here that they don't want this conversation to hit the mainstream like I would, or maybe more, techy people or data privacy oriented people, is if you view these things in a finance lens, so you're saying, okay, I'm viewing it as a perception of finance, then you're going to bring all the finance and all the legacy systemic issues we already have. This is the information age. This is an information. So you have to think of it as from the mental model of information versus finance. This is kind of this big fundamental concept, at least I evangelize a lot with my business and kind of how you perceive an estate and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, it would be nice to think that we'll look back on this in 10 years' time, and the regulatory authorities would have the end result they focused on what they should be focusing on, which is investor fraud, and not trying to dictate the mechanics of the actual technology itself. Because I think a big shift over the past 5 years with cryptocurrency to regulators trying to say how it should evolve rather than sticking to what they should be doing, which is stopping investor fraud.
And I'm going to be very vocal on this because Gavin, I'm right there, and I'd like to yell it as loud as I can from the highest mountain I can. If you have a Treasury Secretary or a Finance Ministry or a central bank saying, "Hey, we're fighting climate change, we're not fighting, the derivative liability exposure of Deutsche Bank," it's like these are way different conversations. It's like, and not only that, it's a bit disingenuous on the fiduciary responsibility of these institutions fundamentally.
Maybe to bring a new angle and aspect to it, and rather than going to what the mass is doing, I think what NFTs are doing is they provide a huge opportunity to change business models. What I mean here is that it's called the Starbucks effect. So Starbucks didn't invent anything. Well, you can argue coffee was there, coffee shops were there, but what they've done is a new way of delivering it. So again, you walk out with coffee. And NFTs do something very similar. So I'm running a private project with a couple of artists, friends of mine. What we have done is we put a picture of a piece of art, or a piece of jewelry, or a jacket, or something unique online on OpenSea. You can then buy the NFT. By buying the NFT, you buy right to own that real product. So you have the NFT, you put it in your pocket, and then with the NFT, you can go visit the artist and pick up your product. So those are, to me, implementations that are very easy to do. No problem with the NEC or anything else, but it's a new way of interacting with the artist, so to speak, with whoever produces those real live goods. And it's something that's very easy to do because you don't need any digital art or anything else. The only complication here is you need to somehow find the link between the NFT and the unique product to avoid people doing and coming. So that's the challenge here. But I think that's a very easy and interesting way of using NFTs these days and straight away.
And another, the use case Klaus mentioned is so important, especially if you have to go to this new business environment and try to balance out the technology strategies to do things. Case outside of art. So the big concept that's happening, the NFTs is a kind of core element, is how this concept between a nation state or a network state, and it's how instead of a nation state and they do their whole legal process and control governance and issuance stuff in their fashion, basically all that matters is these network elements that are across borders, and essentially like your NFT of your passport or your validation or accreditation to that specific network or operating on that. So that use case class, that's probably the most powerful aspect of NFTs.
Yeah, what you mentioned, Klaus, the is something from a very I don't have an artistic bone when it comes to actually giving people the ability to use their talents as individually. You no longer have to get a sponsor who's going to pay nothing to do your first batch of paintings and sell in a gallery. It actually gives these young artists exposure and lets them get onto that ladder with a hurdle. I think that's a really exciting area, which is really new. You know, you've not had a platform to do that before NFTs became something people. Moving on to more mundane, dislike aspects of NFTs, property. Since I've been with blockchain, I've heard everyone say the property industry is so opaque and so it needs the blockchain to sort it out. It still hasn't happened. Do you guys have a view why it's taking so long for this to be adopted? Is it because there's so much vested interest in it not being adopted, or are there bigger technical challenges that people don't see on the surface?
Yeah, Gavin, I would say my judgment on that specific question is the financial interests that do not want to adopt have a vested interest because by just pure structure, they can see they cannot control the market, and and that's why from a security point of view, if you're you have a huge asset management firm and your cash flow, all your different products, your whole life and career has been built on this structure before, and now you're telling me, hey, here's a whole new way that you don't understand. It's all the complex part about computers and economics, whether you want to have a Keynesian or Austrian point of view, all in the same conversation. So you have to do a lot of thinking, you have to do a lot of homework, you have to do a lot of due diligence, and I think it's easy to just be lazy and comfortable and sit on gold than it is to really, understand the cybernetic future.
Do you think it's more the properties that don't want it because it will allow people to solve in a properly market at a lower input level than it is solicitors, agents, all the other guys are part of that food chain to get a property transaction completed.
Exactly. Yeah. So if instead of following this financial authority food chain, it goes into this kind of data tech power food chain, which they know they're not. They know they're going to be caught slipping down if they try to act like they know it. So the emperor has no clothes.
I think you have to differentiate a little bit here for listening or trying to be very close on the wording. So there is blockchain in property in a sense that people bought real estate with Bitcoin. So that happened in Dubai. That probably happened in other countries as well. So there's a lot of that. And from the other aspect of what you're saying, I assume you mean the land register and to put this on the blockchain.
Yeah.
Which is not centralized here. So even if the state would do it, it's still the state who needs to underwrite that this is direct entry. So that would be a decentralized system. So you could still have the blockchain, which is very useful for recorder work. But in terms of practicality, I mean, if you think we can't even today from home or do anything of these, really, if it comes to property ownership, it's probably one of the oldest ownership that mankind has and the most protected holy grail of ownership. It will by virtue to slowly move because it's a system that works with the land register in Europe, have it in most countries. What you see is probably some evolving states or states that now I don't know, you take Dubai, you take Estland or Letland or one of those countries, they normally move very fast in new technology and they're the first ones to try something like that. I would probably put Switzerland down for one of the first ones to try it. But if you think about it, before they could really do it, they would need to run in parallel for many, many years, rather than switching to just the blockchain. And then you have to think which is the true copy. Is it the blockchain one, or is it the paperwork one? So that will take a while. The question is, does it need to be on blockchain or not? Because it will still be centrally underwritten. It will never be decentralized.
Fraud much harder to and I'll give you an example. I inherited a few years ago. There was actually an option which I took, which is you want the deeds to be protected against fraud, because it's actually so easy. If you steal someone's identity, it's relatively easy to steal property. You've got their identity, then you can claim to land registry. It's horrifically simple. So in the UK, you have this system where you can designate a lawyer who has to approve a transfer for itself, and it's just a simple thing they do.
Back to authentication service.
Authentication, absolutely. At least with some kind of blockchain system, you could help prevent against that kind of abuse. Well,
I don't know. I mean, blockchain is unmutable, but it's prevent you from putting wrong information into the blockchain, which then is unmutable.
no, but it does if that process is me or my advisor has to sign on a transaction, and if I lose my key, it has to go to a court, then it makes it harder for somebody to steal that property.
I kind of simplify at least all these legal obstacles as like, okay, does blockchain follow admiralty law or Canaan law? And whoever you ask, they'll be okay if it's Canaan law or maybe not. At least court structures.
I think that's a very important point as well, because a standard, a standard that works through internationally and in different countries and can be read, and databases that interact, etc. But I think tokenization would help. I'm not sure the blockchain is really good for the register. I definitely believe factor authentication, if you want to call it that, would be extremely absolutely.
So this is the problem when we sort of operate thinking, okay, let's have a human layer of defense. Us as humans, we're the most exploitable aspect of our entire global system. And say you have a managed government blockchain, and you have a sysadmin that I guess is also a lawyer or something, somehow magically, and then what's to stop Russia from targeting that specific individual and essentially just compromise my state through one simple attack vector?
I'm not a big fan of your property being held in an NFT.
I trust. I have the concept of like the code is law in the sense of how, because it's all about this. It's a conversation about trust, and unfortunately in these high level disputes, trusting it varies on a million different factors, but in the fundamental security aspect, why do you? It's like why does a government trust? Why do you trust the central bank accounting system? Do you trust the code in there, or you trust human text in there? And really, how do you verify any of that? Because it's all built on so.
You're proposing, but I do trust the central bank accounting system.
Well, that's probably one of the solutions. What you would need to do is you probably have a state run, you need it decentralized, and so if you don't have one database, but you have 5 or 6 of them, so if you hack one, it doesn't affect all the others. At least you need to copy something.
agree. It's hard. It's hard to like make that leap for me in the sense of like which is more secure, right? And the whole concept of decentralized is to make the attack power less centralized, and that's kind of the state. And if I were, if they were asking me, want to have obviously specific mechanisms and hierarchies of, accredited officers to help make the decision, but it can't. It's not. It purely has to be. It's off of a merit of knowledge of the technology and science versus, hey, we're just doing financial ticks about this.
Can you imagine the central banks for allowing that sort of transparency anyway? As you said earlier, it's built around a base. It's built around shielding the effect of their monetary operation.
Yeah, and a good example, at least in the U.S. system, is the interbank repo facilities, credit facilities. By law, they're saying they don't have to tell the public about who got the sort of overnight liquidities for 2 years. How does that?
Yeah. So moving back to NFTs, Klaus, what do you think is going to be the biggest innovation that we'll see in the market over the next 3 years?
Yeah, I was about to ask you the same. I I think there will be a phase of consolidation, which we partly have here. I mean, most of the reports are exaggerated in the NFT market go down because they don't take into account the overall drop of value of Ethereum. The volume of NFT gone down. I think the use numbers are still up. I think what will happen is specialization areas. So different areas will come to use NFTs in different ways. For example, the gaming market, where it's already quite popular to use NFT. I think the arts market will be a big one. For digital art, actually, meant for real art, or not real art, for physical art, and then really, like I mentioned, buying high value items. I think that will all be NFT very soon.
When I see innovation, the way I'm trained on it is what it means is people, process, and technology. That's what you're trained. And so where there's an edge for businesses, organizations, and nonprofits, people to have an edge with their people, process, technologies to make labor easier to do, to make process more streamlined, management and reporting more streamlined. There's a lot of room for opportunity. I really want to frame it from like an old net worth kind of a Commonwealth kind of point of view, but I think the big one that's probably tangible is see now, and like for example, Google just adopted accepting Coinbase or crypto payments. I think it'll be like these organizations that understand how to integrate these way of doing things with where you interface with your wallet and identify with your wallet signatures. They're just going to have a strategic edge because they're going to be ahead of the curve. And that could be in a basis exactly what Klaus mentioned with the Rolex. You have a Rolex branded certified proof of ownership instead of having the mechanism and some serial tied identification. But that could be translated to any product. And I definitely think like if I can make a watch with NFT, I'd buy it right now.
And it's a clever idea because, as you said, Klaus, how do you can't? There's no resale market unless you've got the NFT token to go with it. So it's security. Marcy, your views
On NFT overall?
over the next 3 years, big innovations. See, I like the one being the one asking the question. I don't know too much then.
I think that NFTs provide new roles for young artists, specifically in areas like Klaus mentioned, fashion. It as the Asian market exists right now, unless you have a boutique in a key location, and that can be online now too. Um, getting the number of people so they have a viable brand is a challenge. I am attending events where young artists are getting involved in the NFT market using these um, marketplaces as a way to put themselves forward. So that is going to mean fundamentally that NFTs have the opportunity to change. I think that is something that's really exciting, and we are really at the nascent stages of this. There's so much that can be. Yes, we have to go through this boom and bust cycle. We're really excited about it, and the price goes really high. We've overcompensated, and things are really too valuable, and they come off, and there is this the naysayers jump on board and say this is the end of it. But I think the market will return and will broaden. There'll be more different kinds of assets being sold this way.
I want to go ahead.
Sorry. There's one area that we haven't as well, which I call excess NFT. So I'm working at the moment with a club in Madrid, and what they want to do is they want people to go to their website, log on Web3, and then you can buy access to a club. You can buy membership, you can buy a day pass. And that gives you the opportunity to go to this club, meet people. And if you think it through, it becomes a lot smarter. It's all tokenized. So what you can do is you can say everyone who's in the club, you do a token drop and say now for this and this drink 20% off. You know, so you can start distributing through tokens.
Yeah.
You can be very smart with it. I don't know if you really need blockchain keys for that, but I think it's a very neat way of doing it. So you basically have this token in your wallet that gives you access because you just get it when you go in, they know who you are. You could have an individual membership. So one membership is you can bring 3 people and you get free drinks. Another one is you can be there for half a day, etc. So you have individual memberships, so to speak, and don't even resell them if your membership allows that. So this excess NFT, I think, is a big topic as well, and it will become popular for pop concerts, etc., etc. as well, I'm sure.
Thank you. I think that maybe the title should be NFTs and Web3, because in many ways Web3 for me is the most exciting thing of Web3, and it's exactly things like that. And you said that maybe you don't need the blockchain, but actually I think if people become used to holding their assets of all sorts, just tokens, trading tokens, that works of art, identifiers of works of art, identifiers of their club membership, their Web3 token, which is on Web3 wallet, which is on their phone, ubiquitous, and people will simply use it. And I think that'd be a big change over the next 3 years or so. Sorry, Tavalla.
I want to add an element as we all speculate into the future and nature of art, and it's how human art versus AI art, and how would you put this in the mind of Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or an art enthusiast and how that influences culture, who has the upper hand, and the most that we perceive. Whereas, like, there was a situation in the U.S. where an AI art won a state fair, and they kind of winning, and they did. All the human artists got mad. So you know, I think art and a lot of artists they have this. There's a strong perception of human creation, the beauty of human creation, but AI is human creation, so you can't say it's not. So this kind of these subtleties in how the future manifests, I think, is, especially as I talk with know more people older generation. I like to add that twist because it's truly a new.
And so legally, at least in U.S. law, I read something about recently, because there's this famous case of a monkey who somehow got a hold of somebody's camera and took its selfie of itself, which the owner of the camera he took it back from the monkey, he tried to monetize it, and somebody came in as a solicitor on behalf of the monkey for its rights. And I believe, at least within U.S. law, that art has to be created by a human for copyright and ownership to apply.
Have you guys heard the story of the Google engineer that was whistleblowing the AI? So that AI contracted a lawyer. It reached out to a lawyer to defend its. So where this goes, who knows? But if us as humans gotta sharpen our game.
And going back to your legal definition, the argument would be that my AI that created the picture is no different to a paintbrush. I still own that picture. I am the creator of that picture. So it doesn't invalidate it as a copyrightable work simply as it generated by AI, because that's no different to a paintbrush creating.
Paintbrush doesn't. You can't look at you put a paintbrush on the tape, it's just going to sit there. There has to be some guiding force. And it was a monkey. The monkey took its own picture.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
To trading bots, I mean, you should have the trading bots now. I mean, you program it once, but then you make profit for the rest of your life. It's pretty easy.
Well, I should be very upset if you start demanding its share of the management fee. So.
Oh, it's quite interesting that they have jumped in on the positive side, because don't always do that. Um, jump in on the positive with something that's associating cryptocurrency.
It will certainly help move it to the mainstream. If it becomes for people to do. The other thing which they announced is the Oculus, and so what it has is much more augmented reality as well as virtual reality. And you can have a situation where people in living rooms might have their NFT virtually on their wall, and as far as they're concerned, it's part of their surrounding. It's sitting on the wall. In fact, it's being projected by the device that they're wearing. So it's as technology improves at the moment, it's very clunky. But moving forward 3 years or so, and it'll be interesting how people combine real reality and virtual assets to technology.
I also think one thing that's fundamental to mainstream adoption is I compared it a little bit to a car. No one really cares what's under the hood and how it works. So it needs seamless integration with UX, where I gave you the example of that X NFT. You just click a button. You don't even notice that you're buying a token. So you need the basic setup with the wallet, and wallets are very important. I think there will be a whole emphasis coming on that. And I'm surprised Facebook doesn't have their own wallet yet, because it's the first thing I would do. But So it's again about UX quite a bit.
But I think Facebook, with the Libra situation, so I think they're treading very cautiously forward. But
So I'm showing an example of like AI art I've made, and I have terrible art. I can't draw, I can't writing, but I can do creative writing with Word. So like this is an example with artists, you know, they're competing. Artists are competing with AI. Just they are, you know.
Certainly within the music sphere.
And
Absolutely.
AI can make very aesthetically, visually, you know, creative things and beautiful things. It's kind
so these pictures, they're all AI generated. Is that
yeah. Basically, I just typed in prompt, and then this is what it gave me back because
Yeah.
I have access to the OpenAI labs.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you know, I was just experimenting with AI, and it's kind of a unique creative writing type of thing. It's like, okay, like try to, you know, spell out a beautiful thing, some symbolic thing, and it'll make it for you. And
What's amazing is the way they give examples of successful and pleasing music in particular, and it will replicate styles of music. Absolutely fascinating the way that it works.
and there's AI music too.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's gonna get so much more complicated. It's gonna be hard to keep up with.
So those are two subjects. We've cleaned at least two subjects that we have to address on follow-up roundtables. We absolutely need to do one on Web3 because that's a much bigger area and is discussion. And artificial intelligence, maybe limited artificial intelligence in the art, because you could take and have a separate 24-hour round discussion about it. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for attending this Thursday Eve. Klaus, would you like to give a little shout out to either one of your businesses or one of the projects you were working on?
Not here, but obviously Immerse Land is one of my favorite projects, and
Thank you.
can't wait to get my own headset and to get my own build soon, and to get more and more users on a couple of other projects, but we can discuss it on a different day.
Great. We have to have a follow-up call with information that I have to give to you. Tabalo, your business?
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Young, and we built a SaaS platform that the product is oriented to training and promoting cyber monetary literacy and helping teach people how to be crypto, cyber, and financial analysts at a lot more affordable rates and with free and supporting community around. So that's shilling.
Really worthwhile thing, definitely necessary. Gavin, what do you do for your day job?
Well, I might work for Pandora hedge funds and with crypto for high net worth individuals and other funds.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, gentlemen. Be well. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.